We are so happy you're here.
It's now time for a devotional thought. Jesus 101 is sharing with us this morning.
Hello everyone, we continue with our series, After God's Heart, on the life of David. I once heard a definition of justice, mercy, and grace that I want to tell you about. It said, justice is when you get what you deserve, mercy is when you don't get what you deserve, and grace is when you get what you don't deserve. Again, justice is when you get what you deserve, mercy is when you don't get what you deserve, like if you deserved a punishment and you don't get it, you got mercy, right? But grace is when, on top of all of that, you get what you don't deserve, like when God forgives us, and at the cross, He forgave our sin, but on top of that, we get eternal life, which we don't deserve. So that's grace. Today, we're going to talk about a story where David shows that he is really a man after God's own heart. And we're going to start actually on 1 Samuel chapter 20, where Jonathan asked David to make a covenant with him. You know that Jonathan was King Saul's son, but he knew that David was going to succeed his father on the throne. And he loved David. They were the closest friends. And 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 14, it says, "If I am still alive, will you not show me the loving kindness of the Lord, that I may not die?" And then he goes on, verse 15, "You shall not cut off your loving kindness from my house forever, not even when the Lord cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth." So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David. It's interesting because he knew that he wouldn't succeed his father, that David would. Well, of course, David said, yes, I love you as my friend, and I will show mercy and loving kindness to your whole family, even if you're not here anymore. So 2 Samuel chapter 4 tells us that when Jonathan and Saul were killed in battle, and you can read this whole story in the last chapter of 1 Samuel, they were killed in battle. The king and his sons were killed in battle. As a matter of fact, it says that they were killed they were hanged. The enemies, Philistines, took their heads off and hanged them on a wall. And if you go to visit Beth Shan today in Israel, there's a tell behind the town, and about 2/3 of that tell would have been the time where the wall was, and they hang those bodies there, which was very disgraceful. And some good people from a different town came and got the bodies out of there and buried them appropriately, burned them and buried them. And something happened when they give the news that Saul and Jonathan have died. And I'm going to read that to you in 2 Samuel chapter 4. Verse 4, "Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son crippled in his feet. And how did he get crippled? He was 5 years old when the report of Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel, and his nurse took him up and fled. And it happened that in her hurry to flee, he fell and became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth." And that's the story we're going to talk about today. And the story is found in 2 Samuel chapter 9. Now you know that Saul had a son, Jonathan, and Jonathan had a son, Mephibosheth. But he was crippled because the nurse tried to get away real fast, thinking, there's going to be a new king, and they're going to try to kill this one, because it was the custom at the time that you killed the previous dynasty, so nobody else could say, okay, I'm going to get to the throne. So 2 Samuel chapter 9, many years have gone by. Mephibosheth is now an adult, and he's still crippled. And one day, in verse 1, David said, "Is there yet anyone left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" He remembered the covenant that he had made with Jonathan. And somebody said to him, let's read verse 3. The king said, "Is there not anyone of the house of Saul?" Saul had been his oppressor. He had persecuted him. "To whom I may show the kindness of God." It's not even my kindness, it's the kindness of God. And Ziba said to the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan who is crippled in both feet." He doesn't even say the name. He says he's a cripple. You don't want to have anything to do with him. He's a cripple. It's interesting when you are known by the things that went bad in your life. She's the adulteress. He's a jailbird. He's a cripple. And the king said, "Where is he?" And Ziba said to the king, "Behold, he is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, in Lodebar." I want to show you where Lodebar was. This is kind of the Sea of Galilee, and this is the River Jordan, and this is the Dead Sea. Here is Jerusalem, where David is reigning. Lodebar is somewhere over here, is on the other side of the Jordan. He went as far as he could because he was trying to get away from this new king because, of course, the custom was that he would kill all the descendants, right? And Lodebar means a desolate place without pasture. It's in the middle of nowhere in the desert and nobody's going to find him there, right? Well, David says, go get him. I can imagine, it says here that they went to Lodebar. I can imagine the limousine, the camels going to Lodebar and the whole town going, "What is this?" And they're coming for Mephibosheth, the cripple. And verse 6, Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David and fell on his face, prostrated himself. And David said, "Mephibosheth." And he said, "Here's your servant." And then David said, "Do not fear," because he's so afraid. He's so afraid. The first thing that David says, "Don't fear." And then he says, "Why? I will surely show kindness to you for the sake of your father Jonathan, and I will restore to you all the land of your grandfather Saul, and you shall eat at my table regularly." And Mephibosheth says, verse 8, "What is your servant that you should regard a dead dog like me?" This self-deprecation label. Perhaps you have felt like Mephibosheth, crippled, socially, emotionally, even physically, mentally, spiritually. And here comes David and says, "Not only I will not kill you, even though you are Saul's descendant, I'm going to give you back all the land of your grandfather," which must have been a lot because Saul was a king. "And you will eat at my table regularly as one of my sons." And it says on verse 11, at the end, Mephibosheth ate at David's table as one of the king's sons. I love this story because Mephibosheth was disabled politically, emotionally, socially, physically, and yet grace was given to him the way that is given to us. We get what we don't deserve. And God had made a covenant with us, the way that David had made a covenant with Jonathan. And in this process, everybody was vindicated. Jonathan as a friend of David, David as a man after God's own heart who keeps the covenants, and even Mephibosheth was vindicated because he was of royal descent, and here he's now sitting at the king's table for good. Can you imagine Mephibosheth sitting at the king's table for the rest of his life? You know that we are told that when we finally are with God, we are going to be in a banquet. And I love this. This is Isaiah 25:6. "The Lord of hosts will prepare a lavish banquet for all peoples on this mountain." That's what awaits us. We don't deserve it, yet we have it, because that's what grace does. Mercy doesn't give you what you deserve because he took our punishment, but grace gives you what you don't deserve. And can you imagine the first time Mephibosheth was at the king's table, dangling those little crippled feet? If you can imagine that, you can imagine